and welcome to another episode of Teaching with Inquiry Live. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me tonight. I want to talk tonight about report cards. So thank you for maybe putting me on in the background while you are busily finishing your report cards or maybe just starting your report cards. And I want to talk about some quick time-saving tips that I hope are going to be helpful for you so that the hours and hours of daunting time that you have ahead of you at writing those report cards, if you can save yourself minutes or even hours by doing small little changes, then maybe that will help. Now, these are lessons that I have learned because for a few years I have had enormous classes of 36 and now 29 students. And the idea of writing report cards for that many students is enormous. So if you have large classes, you know what I'm talking about. The size of those classes makes it a tremendous undertaking to write those comments. So I've had to find ways to shave and cut down my time so that I can actually still spend time with my family. And I'm going to share those with you tonight. So my name is Patty. I am a teacher blogger behind madlylearning.com, and I come live every single Monday night at 9 p.m. to talk about all things teaching, especially what teaching with inquiry looks like in my classroom and how you can implement more inquiry-based teaching strategies in your classroom that are easy, practical, and fun for both you and your students. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your enormously busy schedules to join me for tonight. So, report cards. How are you possibly going to save yourself some time so that you can write those report cards in a way that is going to cut down on some of that overwhelm and allow you to not have to hide yourself in a cold basement and away from everybody that you know and everything that you love so that you can get those done before that deadline? So we're going to talk about that tonight. So my first step for you is to use curriculum checklists. Now, this sounds maybe a little strange, but there is a website that has taken all of the Ontario curriculum and perhaps other curriculum from different provinces and places, and they have put this in a checklist format. Now, this sits in my plan book because I find it's a really easy way with the check boxes that I can tick off where it has overall expectations in one column, the check boxes aligned with the specific expectations of the curriculum. Now, I find this a really easy way to track because I can, as I'm teaching things, as I've covered things with my students, as I've done assessments on different things, I can go back to this checklist and check off which expectations I've covered and which expectations I still need to cover. This has been tremendously helpful when I'm sitting down to write my report cards because I can quickly at a glance look at which expectations I've covered already this term, as well as which overall expectations I should be commenting on the report card because it's already done. So I probably sit down, definitely not every day, but maybe about once a month, once every 2 to 3 weeks. And I will go through the curriculum for all of grade 4 and all of grade 5 that sits in my plan book. And I will simply go through and check off expectations that I have assessment materials for, things that I've covered in math and language and in science and social studies. It lets me see how far I've come, and it also allows me to see where I need to plan and go next based on what I've done. So although this is something I've been doing most of the term, it does save me some time. So if you haven't done that yet, I'll give you the link and you can download those curriculum checklists and you can go through and just check off quickly which expectations you've covered so far this term, because then you'll see where all your check marks are laying out and according to the curriculum, and you can see which expectations you should be most likely commenting on based on where you've checked off those check boxes. Now, you could simply do this just by photocopying the curriculum. and just checking off the expectations. But this is a condensed form of the curriculum, so it fits on less pages, and it's all in one PDF because she's taken out a lot of the teacher suggestions and sample questions that is in that curriculum, which makes it a lot easier to be able to figure out what it is that you've done and you've covered. So I will give you the link so that you can grab those curriculum checklists, because I'm actually finding them really handy. And I didn't think that would be that much of a time saver, that someone's just written out the curriculum, but they're definitely free and they're on her website. I think all you have to do is put in your email and she will give you the download link for them. And I will find you the link for that. Another thing that I think is really important to save you time is creating assessment portfolios for your students. Now, that sounds daunting and scary. Literally all I have is under my desk at school, there is a plastic black crate that has hanging folders in them, and each one of my students has a hanging folder. And the reason it's under my desk and not in a filing cabinet or in a drawer is because when I'm sitting at my desk, it's there at my feet. And it reminds me that I have to file things in there and that that's where things go. And it's right in my face and easily accessible at my hands. And I'm not just, when I would put it in a filing cabinet, it would just get buried and I'd forget about it and never keep it updated. But what I do is when my students are handing in those loose sheets, instead of just clipping them together, I will file them in this assessment portfolio for students. Now, it's not something that they have access to. It's just something that I'm using. So I will put their work in there after I photocopied it and sent a copy home to parents. I will put their work in this file folder. And because all my students have numbers, I've numbered them. All my grade 4s have a 3-digit number that starts with 400. And all my grade 5s have 3-digit numbers in the 500 range. So 501, 502, 503. And because they write their numbers on it, I can file all of their work that's been handed in the order in which they sit on my class list, which means that when I'm filing, it's not taking a ton of time because I can just quickly file things right away. If it's something like student notebooks that need to be filed, so our social studies, I just threw their notebooks in their portfolio. Other students aren't seeing, say, marks or assessments or feedbacks because it's all contained inside a portfolio. So I've also had students just quickly shove papers and notebooks into this assessment portfolio as well. This is making it easy for me in report cards because then I can just pull out a file for a particular student. So instead of having, say, piles and piles and piles of marking, all of my language books, all of my reading books, all of my math books, I can file them by student and then pull them out as I need to just look at that student's work kind of in a snapshot format. So that saves me time instead of going through all of the piles of my math notebooks and going, okay, I'm looking for Susie's math work because I'm not sure if I should give her a C+ or a B-. So let me have a look back at kind of how she did on that subject I taught 2 months ago. So I can quickly pull that up because I know where her stuff is instead of having to sort through, say, a stack of 30 notebooks to find Susie's information. So even though that might not save me hours, that might save me minutes of having to search and file through piles of work. Those minutes add up after you're thinking you're doing 29, 30, 36 students. You're going to save, those minutes will add up if you have that system organized. So I like to have that built and ready to go if I'm good throughout the term, but I'll be honest, I have a bucket full of papers that all need to be filed that will need to probably happen before I really sit down to write report cards. So I don't always file them, but at least I know where they go so that I can have quick access to them when I'm ready to look at them. So that was number 2 of my time-saving tip, is an assessment portfolio. My other one is don't mark everything. I think a lot of us as teachers feel pressure that every single thing a student does has to be marked. And then we have this sense of guilt as we see these student work piles building up that we just physically and emotionally cannot possibly get through in the amount of time that we are given to mark things. So I want you to give yourself permission. I'm giving you permission to say that not absolutely everything your students do deserves your time in marking it. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not valuable. You can get other students to provide feedback on it, and you can use your time in class to have students self-assess that work so that they are giving themselves feedback or they're having conversations. You can build in assessment opportunities where they're getting feedback and direction on their work. You can glance at it, which doesn't take as much as marking and then writing out feedback comments or filling out a rubric for absolutely everything that they are completing. You don't have to mark everything. If you mark 2 or 3 things, and those 2 or 3 things, you give it a mark, you write your constructive feedback for your students, you perhaps are conferencing with them and giving that feedback. You pick, perhaps you ask them to give you 2 or 3 of their best pieces of work, and that's what you really want to look at. So then they're doing some of those, metacognitive pieces where they're self-selecting the pieces that they think they've done the best job at, that they want you to mark. And then there's some self-evaluation in there. They've decided that those 3 pieces are the best representation of their work. So that's what you can mark, as opposed to marking absolutely everything that comes in and then feeling guilty that you can't quite get to everything. I definitely don't mark everything my students do. Sometimes I can provide quick feedback. I can observe what they're doing. I can get assessment in other ways, as opposed to giving them, filling out a rubric every time they do something for me, because that's very daunting. The best way that I can provide consistent feedback and mark things is by using student conferencing, especially when it comes to their writing, because they're writing a tremendous amount for me that I cannot possibly keep up with it if I were only marking at home or on my preps or after school. So what I end up doing is I look at it while students are with me in a student conference, and then I can read it, provide them feedback, write that feedback form right there with them and sitting in front of me. We can have a quick discussion. It might be 10 minutes per student, maybe 15 minutes per student that I have time to spend throughout the week. I might get to maybe half of my students or the majority of my students. So every 2 weeks, I'm at least giving them real meaningful feedback and marking on what they're actually doing. And I find that actually provides more opportunities for growth for students than if I had simply collected their work, put a mark on it, and handed it back, because it's that conversation and that feedback one-on-one that I find they respond to a lot better. And because it's happening in class while the rest of my students are doing their independent literacy centers, I'm not taking it home. So it saves me time of a lot of the time I am spending in class. If I'm doing less teaching and less talking and there's more student inquiry happening in my classroom, it means that I have more time for assessment in class as opposed to during my prep, after school, and at home. So that definitely saves me a bit of time by not marking everything, asking for students to help me with their marking, and giving opportunities for feedback. My other suggestion is on what constitutes a B. And I think this is a really tough concept, and it overwhelms a lot of teachers on what a B actually looks like. And I find sometimes as teachers, we err on the side that we don't err on the side of caution, and we often will up a mark based on effort or a student that tries really hard. Sometimes we may even look at students and compare them to the other students in our class, and those that are doing really well will get an A, those that are doing good will get a B, and those that are trying but not quite getting it will get a C. But I do recommend that you have a look at exemplars and really try to compare what your students are doing to exemplars that you can find on EQAO, on the writing samples from the ministry. You can look at Ontario Writing Assessments. DRA has exemplars. There's lots of different examples that you can get from other students, and consult with your teaching team. Ask other teachers to give feedback on what you think would be a B. We have to be careful to remember that those curriculum expectations are end of the year grade 4, or grade 5, so it's totally normal if students aren't quite there yet. So try to not just bump up marks because they're trying, but really think critically about where they're doing in comparison to where they should be. And sometimes that comes with experience because you've seen a large cross section of students at that grade level. But if that's not you, and this might be your first time at the grade level, or you're newer to teaching and you're not exactly sure of what a B actually looks like for students compared to others, really try to dig into those exemplars and rely on your team of teachers that might be around you or other teachers on social media to help you out and perhaps moderate some of that work for you so you can see what that looks like, because that saves you some time stressing over what it could look like. Another one is, now I've talked about this before, but this is one of my time-saving tips, and it's not, there's no promotion here. I have no affiliation with this company, but it saves me time, so I feel like I need to share, and that is Student Evaluator. It is a web-based program that will help you write your learning skills. When I came to a class of 36 students, and I was pregnant, Student Evaluator saved me hours of work. That was valuable hours that I didn't have to take away from my family at home. And that was really meaningful to me. And the cost of entry to get in to use Student Evaluator made it a no-brainer for me to be able to use it. I find when I'm writing learning skills, they take almost half of my time writing report cards because I feel that they're just that important. It really gives you a snapshot in the student's ability to be successful, even more so than I think some of the marks. And I know with my own kids, that's where I pay the most attention to, is their learning skills and how they're approaching learning in the classroom. So I think, and that seems strange when I'm saying they're so important, so use something else to write it for you. I find that after I'm writing 5 or 6 learning skills, they all start sounding the same. And I find that they're often more qualitative than they are quantitative. And I do find Student Evaluator, I can fill out a rubric, a little check box. I decide which learning skills are going to be assessed. Then I look at, I check off the boxes for students and decide where they are on the rubric that's given on Student Evaluator. And then it generates a comment for me. Now I look at those comments as a framework. But that framework cuts half my time because I don't have to think of what that framework is for me. It sets up sentence starters and ideas of how to construct those sentences in a way that kind of captures what I meant to say about that student. I still have to go in and tweak and change the things here or there, or hit regenerate a couple of times to generate a different comment. But it cuts my time in probably half. And I estimate that I was maybe spending 15 hours on writing a class of over 30's learning skills comments. And I think I was able to get that class done in between 5 and 8 hours over time, getting them done through Student Evaluator. So that for me was time well spent. So I highly recommend it. I use it every single time. I have never had a problem with a principal saying anything about them. In fact, because each one is different, they don't all sound the same, so that works. And I do personalize them. Now, it doesn't work for every student. We all have special friends that need, in our classrooms, that need specific and very carefully worded comments in their learning skills. And I find it doesn't work so well for those students that need very specific comments because of behavior and learning needs. So I will handwrite those, not handwrite, but I will do them myself and not often use Student Evaluator. But for most of my C, my B, and my A kids, Student Evaluator works really, really well. So I highly recommend it. Another thing I want to talk about is using a comment bank. Now, I know a lot of school board report card software allows you to use a comment bank. I have yet to see a piece of software that actually uses a comment bank built into its software that saves you time and doesn't add bigger headaches to your work process, whether it's editing or flagging and appending comments. I find that their comment bank, or just the programs themselves, are not exactly written for what we need as teachers, unfortunately. I think they could do a much better job at doing that. So what I hear is I often hear teachers will say that they use Microsoft Word and they write out all their comments in Microsoft Word first, and then they just copy and paste them into the report card program. I am appealing to you to stop using Microsoft Word because it's not designed for that. And because you will be writing them out and then constantly scrolling up and down that Word document through pages and pages of the comments that you're writing, it's not the most effective use of your time because you're wasting minutes, and minutes add up to hours, and hours add up to too much time. So try using a different piece of third-party software. So not your report card comment program. If you are writing your comments outside of your report card writing program, like me this year, and then you are going to be copying, pasting them into your report card comment program to avoid some of the headache that it gives you because it's not really designed the way you need it to be designed. I would encourage you very much to use Excel instead of Microsoft Word. So I want to show you what my comment bank looks like. This is my comment bank. Now there's not going to be a ton of scrolling. I do have it zoomed out so that you can see kind of how everything goes. And the colors do correspond with the curriculum document colors because it's just the way I organize my brain. But I have my comments for letter grade D, C, B, and A all in a table. And then I have the subject strand here, and I have a comment that matches for each one. Now I'm in the process of updating this, and I'll show you why I'm updating this particular one. This is based on the same comment bank that I do sell on Teachers Pay Teachers, but I've had to modify it slightly because I'm going to show you why Excel is much better than Word for this. So I have all of my comments here for grade 4, as well as, you can see this is how I have it zoomed in here, as well as all of my comments for grade 5. Now you can't actually see all of the comments because I have the boxes that they're written in kind of shrunk. So when I click on them though, it will expand, and then I can select the text, copy it, and I can paste it over. And I find with Word, I can't get this much data in that small amount of space. So I much prefer, as a result, to use Microsoft Excel for that reason, because I can get actually all of my comments into this section. So I do provide my report card comment bank using Google Sheets, but that can easily be downloaded and opened up into Excel because they really talk to each other well. You might have to do a bit of formatting to make the text the right size, but it really does work well. And I did it in Google Sheets because not everybody has Excel. This potentially would also work in Pages. However, I haven't used it in Pages, just Google Sheets and in Excel. Now, the reason that Excel, in my opinion, is better than Word if you're going to be writing out your comment bank in a third-party software program such as Excel is because of its ability to be exported and recognized by a lot of other programs. So a lot of programs will just recognize the file format that Excel is in, and you can import and export. Your software report card program might actually export and import comments through Excel. So if you have them in this format and you tell Excel how you're formatted there, it's much easier to be able to import and export and transfer in between different programs, because this is a fairly common and universal way to organize data, which our report card comments really are a lot of data just with words instead of numbers. So the other thing I've done is find yourself a friend who might not be a teacher that really knows Excel. And one of the things I've been able to do with Excel is if I flip over to my math comment bank. Now you'll see that This is just a sample. I've removed my students' names and you've got the pronouns here. Just ignore this first and last name column here. But what I've been able to do is using formulas, they're the HLOOKUP formula. That's the form, HLOOKUP. And you can just, what you do is you can tell Excel to go back to your comment bank and put the comment that you assigned to this subject. So if I give someone a C in addition and subtraction, it will go into the comment bank that the formula tells it to. So in this case, a grade 4 comment bank. It will go into the grade 4 comment bank in row 3 and pull the comment that's associated with C. And that is an HLOOKUP. And I know that's really, really technical. I didn't do this myself. Thankfully, I have a brother and a father who are pretty knowledgeable at it. So if you know somebody who knows Excel, this would be a great way for you to use this. So what it ends up doing is for every strand in math, I'll give a letter grade, it will pull the comment, and then at the very end, I can have it with just telling Excel which cells to pull the comment from, just with a bunch of addition. It will pull all of those comments. So it'll pull F3 and H3, J3, L3, and N3, and it will put it all together, which then I can take that final smush together puzzle piece of a comment and then copy and paste that right into my document. So it's definitely there. Even if you just have all of your comments here and in the report card comment bank and you're simply copying and pasting them, because you can see all of your comments on one screen without the constant scrolling in tables and borders, that's going to save you time. If you have somebody who's knowledgeable on Excel and they can give you ideas on how to use the HLOOKUP or VLOOKUP formulas on Excel, then they can help you build what this looks like as well. So it definitely saves you some time using Excel. It's just a bit more, it's more built for this type of application than say Microsoft Word is. I know we're all as teachers pretty familiar with Microsoft Word, but it's not always great for every application. So we can try to use the right tool for the right job. And since the report card program software that we're often provided isn't always the best program for the job and creates a lot more headaches than are necessary or required, we can use Excel to kind of go around that and make our life just a little bit easier. So I hope that that's given you some ideas on how you can save time and cut and shave minutes, if not hours, off of your process when you're gathering all of your information for your students to actually sit down and write your report cards. You can use a comment bank here on Excel. And if you are doing the copy and the paste process, it might be better able to use Excel versus Word. If you already own the report card comment bank on TPT from my store, then you will have something very similar to what I showed you there with all of your report card comments. And then you, because it's completely editable on Google Sheets, you can go in and tweak and change your report card comments to suit your own classroom and personal needs, but it definitely gives you a starting point so that you're not starting from scratch. You have an idea of what a comment would look like for, say, math, area, perimeter, and length. And in here, actually, all of the strands are there. I do have a bunch of hidden cells that I'm not looking at. So although you don't see all of them in there, they're definitely all there in the document. I just have a lot of cells hidden, like cells 4 and 5 and 8 and 9. Those are gone because I'm not assessing them, like multiplication and division. I'm not assessing them this term. So I've hidden those cells, which is really another nice feature of Excel too, is if you're not using it, you can hide it. It's still there, but it's just not in your view, which is great. So again, hope that's helped you save some time. Good luck on your report cards. I hope that you are able to get through them quickly as quickly as humanly possible and able to enjoy some of your weekends very soon. So thank you very much for watching. I will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.